Welcome back. Let's get to Arsenal. Top of the table and looking very, very good as well. But will Mikel Arteta be tempted to enter the market this month? Gail Davis will be speaking to the Arsenal boss this afternoon. Gail, here's a question for you. Arsenal have so much defensive cover these days. Is there any possibility, even a squidge, that they could go in for Marc Guehi?
Yeah, very good afternoon, Will. According to Carve Solico, and we know him rather well, don't we, in Sky Sports News and around transfer windows, there is just that smidge that they could enter the race in the summer. It's perhaps not a surprising link, is it? Because we know that Marc Guehi is out of contract. So, yeah, entering the race perhaps in the summer was what he put out. Look, when you look at the facts, you said they are very well stocked. They have had injuries, haven't they, there during the season so far. But you look at William Saliba and Gabriel, undoubtedly the number one choices. They're both on long-term contracts now. They've been signed and sealed, haven't they? And they're here, you'd have thought, for the long haul. And added to which, they strengthened last summer with Christian Mosquera, who we've seen come in, haven't we, early on in the season when Saliba was struggling. And then you've got Piero Nkapie, who has a bit of a muscle problem post-Liverpool draw last week. So, yes, he might not be available immediately, but they're there. And then you have to add in also the likes of Jurrien Timber and Ben White, both really can play. They both prefer positions, are in the more fullback position, but they've both played in a central defensive role. And in fact, that's why Ben White was bought, wasn't it? So there are a lot of players there. So I'm not sure that there is even that squidge, or that smidge, as you put it. But the thing I would say is it seems very odd, doesn't it, to be talking about a transfer window in January. And guess what, Will Perry? We're not talking about a striker, because they've got one of those, and they've got two that are coming back in the likes of Jesus, who's found his form, and Havertz, who, of course, played for 20 minutes, having not played since the first game of the season. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he's got to say this afternoon. But, of course, this afternoon is more about that huge semi-final that they've got, first leg in the League Cup against Chelsea tomorrow night.
Gail, thank you very much. I don't know what squidge or smidge is in French. Do you have a word for that?
Sure. Even in English, I'm not really sure what it is.
It's a teeny-weeny chance, Jules. Look, it is, when it comes to Marc Guehi, there are a bit of FOMO knocking about with some clubs, because on paper, everyone fit. Arsenal really don't need Marc Guehi. I know that's crazy to say of a player of his quality, but Saliba and Gabriel have done so well for them. It makes sense for other clubs, but it also does make sense from a business point of view for no matter who you are, Bayern Munich as well.
True, but you can also look at it from the Guehi point of view and say, why would you go to Arsenal? Even if even let's say Arsenal wanted him and put an offer on the table, would you go there in World Cup year, as we've mentioned earlier, where you need to play a lot this January, when he knows that unless there's something that happens to Saliba or Gabriel, he won't play anyway. He would not start in this team. There's no way. I don't think it would be a good move for him. Whereas at City, with all the injuries and the players missing, no problem. At Liverpool, a little bit like Arsenal, unless something happened to Konate and Van Dijk, I don't think he would got in.
Ahead of Konate?
I don't think so. Not for the partnership that he's created with Van Dijk right now. And Guehi, I know he's right-footed, but he plays on the left-hand side, where Van Dijk also plays. For Crystal Palace in the back three, so different to the back four at Liverpool. But I think you also, as a player, need to look at all of that. Okay, how many minutes will I get? Where will I fit in? Who is playing in my positions? And that plays a big part in your decisions.
I wonder what he is thinking, Marc Guehi. A penny for his thoughts. I mean, also the fact that they've gone out of the FA Cup to Macclesfield, by the way, at the weekend. So, he's not defending that. He's got no dreams of going back to Wembley to lift that trophy again.
And to Julian's point, I wonder how much, coming through the Chelsea academy and having been deemed surplus to requirements at Chelsea, he is sort of wary of the fact that if you do move to a big club where you're third or fourth in the pecking order, it can be very damaging for your career. So I think he wants to move to a club where he's a guaranteed name on the team sheet. And City would seem to tick that box.
And Jeff Hendrick, a couple of hours ago with us, was saying that when you can go to these clubs, I mean, even in Conor Gallagher's case, Atletico Madrid are a massive football club, right? I know they're not Real Madrid, Paul, but they are huge. And Conor Gallagher is kind of out of sight, out of mind when it comes to playing for England. I'm not suggesting that Guehi would go and play for Bayern Munich and suddenly Tuchel or whoever the England manager is turns his back on him. When it comes to what Liverpool had arranged with Marc Guehi in the summer, it was a fee around, I think, £35 million, wasn't it? Who knows what the deals were behind the scenes. Liverpool now would probably have to up that agreement from the summer to match, if not better, Manchester City. And there is no guarantee that Liverpool finish in those top 5 places.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a different conversation now. It's a different negotiations as well, because if Guehi comes as a free agent, it's a very different structure to the deal than if you have to pay a transfer fee, obviously, now in January, or it would have been the case last summer for Liverpool in terms of signing on fee, in terms of wages probably. And now that you've got somebody else in the mix as well, between City and Liverpool, it will not just be like who offers the most, because Guehi will look at other parameters really in this discussion. But financially, it would be a very different agreement for Guehi than it would have been 6 months ago for Liverpool, or that it would be even right now. That's why I think it's probably better for him to stay at Palace, finish the season, and then as a free agent, he will have so many more options than now.
And in August, Liverpool were the champions. They still are the champions, of course, but they just spent a lot of money over the summer. Oh my gosh, the sky's the limit for Liverpool. Manchester City, they had a bad season last season. Are they going to get back to the city of old? Well, fast forward 6 months, they do seem to be back to the city of old, whereas Liverpool, there's now a bit of a question mark over them. So are they as attractive a prospect as they were back in August? Or the chance to work under the greatest coach of his generation, Pep Guardiola, is that a lure for Guehi?
Yeah, and actually there might not be a guarantee that City do go back in the summer, because Guardiola will be back from his broken leg, and
True, absolutely.
What's happening. Lots to get through. We'll start though at Manchester United, who are very close to appointing a new interim head coach. Live to Daniel Kahn, who's at Old Trafford for us. Dan, Michael Carrick is the chosen one for now, it appears.
Good afternoon, Will. We're just edging ever closer to that official confirmation that Michael Carrick will take over as interim head coach until the end of the season at Manchester United. We reported earlier today that they've reached a verbal agreement between the club and Carrick for a return for Carrick, really, especially after 12 years at the club as a midfielder, of course. He then became a coach under Jose Mourinho, then joined the backroom staff under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. He had 3 games as an interim after that, but now he will have 17 games in the league to lead this team to compete really for a Champions League place. Now, we saw him arrive at Carrington a bit earlier this morning. He was followed by Director of Football Jason Wilcox as well, really to just finalise contract details and finish all of those finer bits before we get that official confirmation. But we're also getting other details as well, what his backroom staff could potentially look like. And again, reported a bit earlier today that he's expected to name the former England assistant coach Steve Holland as his number 2, which seems quite astute. Of course, Steve Holland, so much experience, especially with England. He helped lead that team alongside Sir Gareth Southgate to 2 finals. He's also seen as very much the tactician, the hands-on coach as part of that England setup, and he'll know quite a few of these players, the likes of Harry Maguire, Luke Shaw, Kobbie Mainoo as well, who has really struggled this season, especially under Ruben Amorim. Carrick himself will also be joined by the likes of former Middlesbrough assistant Jonathan Woodgate, the current under-21s coach Travis Binion, and former teammate Johnny Evans. Darren Fletcher, who was in interim charge last week, he's expected to go back to the under-18s and continue his own coaching journey on that side of things. But look, we're edging ever closer to this official confirmation. Carrick, at this moment in time, is expected to take charge of training tomorrow once we do get that announcement, all building up to Saturday's huge game against Manchester City. And then it's also the week after. Easy for Carrick, isn't it?
Dan, thank you very much. This is what we need, Jamie, this lunchtime, some French fuel, a French fuel injection. And here is Julien Laurent for everyone watching.
Build up. You better be good.
I know. Jules, great to have you with us. So, look, picking up on Michael Carrick, what is success for him at Old Trafford in these, let's face it, there can be no more than 17 games?
It has to be a top 5 finish, really, and I think we talked about it a little bit last week as well. This is a Premier League season where even if United are maybe not good enough to be usually in the top 5 and qualify for the Champions League, this is the year where it's so tight between 4th and 14th that they have to. And that's all he has to think about, is even they're not in the FA Cup anymore, but just focus on that league form. They have to finish up. It's a great opportunity for them to actually get Champions League football, which was not a given at the start of the season, but because the likes of Newcastle and Spurs and all those big clubs are just having an average season so far, it's a great chance for United to actually get that top 5, which again will be a great achievement considering where they were at the start of the season, the last season they had, changing managers halfway through. And I think if they can get top 5, it will be a good job done for Carrick.
The big question, Jamie, is if he does well, which you assume a man of his character and what he did originally at Middlesbrough, certainly in the first year there. If he does succeed and, as Jules says, gets a top 5 finish, maybe even top 4, who knows, maybe even top 3, that really would put the cat amongst the pigeons. Will he be a serious contender for the long-term gig?
The clamour factor amongst the Manchester United fans. They've had their fingers burned before, obviously, by doing that with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, even though he will point to the fact that they finished runner-up, didn't they, under Solskjaer? So, you look at where Manchester United are, arguably he was one of the most successful managers in recent years. I think we're seeing this trend more and more often, aren't we, of these sort of custodians, these safe pair of hands coming in who, quote-unquote, know the club and can kind of see them through to the end of the season. And I think that is obviously what Michael Carrick is being brought in for, and there are going to be big names available after the World Cup, the likes of Nagelsmann and Carlo Ancelotti, Mauricio Pochettino, Thomas Tuchel, perhaps. The question is, Julian, are Manchester United even that attractive a prospect to those big name managers anymore? Because, we're all much of a muchness in terms of our age. We grew up with Manchester United winning everything. Yeah. Are they Manchester United anymore? Are they still a big lure?
I mean, I'm a bit younger than you two, but I would
say, what's he's doing his
I know, I just like...
I know. Your passport down there.
I think if you finish top 5 and there's Champions League for you, it's still Manchester United. There's a new stadium on the way. The training ground has been rebuilt or refurbished, if you want. There's a decent squad there. I think you've got young players who've got more experience. It's not perfect, and you need some work in the summer for sure, but I think it's still a very attractive job. So you'd go for it. And also, if you're the one to turn United around and get it back to the best, then you become a hero, absolute hero. So it could be tricky. I think you go for it. With Carrick, I think you can say to him, listen, if you do well, if you finish top 5, because I think 5th place would take you to the Champions League, then you will part of the conversation. We will consider you to be the permanent manager, but you can't guarantee anything. A bit like what they did with Solskjaer, because that was clearly a mistake.
The other thing is, I remember chatting to Kasper Schmeichel a couple of years ago, who had been at Nice, and he said to me off camera, by the way, Jim Ratcliffe, everything he touches turns to gold. It might take a bit of time, but he will turn Manchester United around. And look, the early signs haven't been great from that point of view, but there clearly is something there, and this is how he turned things around at Nice.
Let that be a message to you footballers watching. There are no secrets when you tell Jamie.
Clearly,
it wasn't off record now. It wasn't off the record.
So what would be the perfect fit long term for Manchester United? And look, give me names, because earlier in the day, Jamie, threw out the name Carlo Ancelotti after the World Cup, Thomas Tuchel, and we know the ones that are already managing in the Premier League. Oliver Glasner, of course, Antonio Areola might be of interest, Marco Silva, who's out of contract as well. But out of those names and on further shores, who is the perfect fit for them in the structure that they have?
I think it's a bit tricky in the sense that I think they've tried the young, upcoming Amorim type, or the ones who did well abroad, like the Ten Hags. For me now, you could try Iraola and he might do really well, but it could be like an Unai Emery Arsenal, where the step up from Bournemouth to United with that pressure, with the fact that it's a United team that would need a lot of work on, might be too much for him. We don't know
what
that.
We're seeing with Thomas Frank.
Yeah, exactly. Or Thomas Frank at Spurs, exactly the same. Whereas I think if you go and get Thomas Tuchel, for example, who's obviously done it with the biggest club, whether that was in Paris or in Germany, at Chelsea, the Champions League, anything you want, I think there's a bit more guarantees there. And I also think you need somebody, not just with the experience, but with the personality to go with it and the character, because this is one of the biggest clubs in the world.
With all the noise about, with all the noise about the managerial appointment, the head coach appointment, with Michael Carrick, with the interim, with the long-term successor, we're not talking about transfers, are we, with Manchester United? And we potentially should be, because of the way that they sign players within the structure of Christopher Vavell, who's the head of recruitment, Jason Wilcox and Omar Barada. Marcus Llorente is doing the rounds in the Spanish newspapers. Could you see that as a possibility for Manchester United?
I think he's done really well at Atletico in a very versatile role. You can play a right back, you can play a right midfielder. He's a very reliable player, there's no doubt. I would be a little bit surprised for Atleti to let him go, to be fair. But if there's a chance there for United, and again, United have to be careful, because we saw with the Casemiro deal, for example, a 5-year deal when you are in your late 20s or early 30s is a bit crazy at times, especially with the kind of money they threw at Casemiro, who's not doing bad this season, but we know what happened since he signed for United. So I think that has to be taken in consideration. They need a mix of the squad with youth and experience, with players who've done in the Premier League before, others that can come from abroad, no problem. And I guess Llorente has the right mentality. but I would be quite cautious with those kind of moves.